Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the 7-Minute Takeover, where we chat all things acquisitions. We're your hosts. I'm Liz Prey.
I'm Eamon Gamble.
In this episode, we are chatting about overcoming an obstacle. So, Eamon, kick us off.
Thanks, Liz. The obstacle that we're overcoming today is a little bit abnormal. We usually talk about objections that the seller has. Today we're talking about an objection that buyers and lenders are going to have when coming into a transaction. And that's a big one in the Main Street market, and that's client concentration or customer concentration.
So what exactly do you mean by that concentration? What does that mean?
I would define it as high concentration being any time that potentially 3 clients generate more than 50% of a company's revenue. You're starting to get into pretty high concentration there. I would say it becomes extreme concentration when one client is generating more than 50% of a company's revenue. If you think about it at a high level, let's say in an extreme case, a company only has one customer.
That is very extreme.
That's very extreme. It's a hypothetical, although not for everyone. In that situation, a lot of buyers and lenders and other parties are going to look at you more as a contracting company with one client, or as basically a glorified employee. And so they start to wonder, okay, is there really value in the business model? Why haven't they been able to expand past this one client? Or have they just been really good over the last 5-10 years of retaining this one good employer?
And that seems like it would be a very risky situation if you bought a company and then you lost a customer. If they account for a large portion of that revenue and you lose that customer, where's the value? And so my dad actually ran into this situation. He used to export produce to the Caribbean, and he had only a few clients, and they were the major superstore markets in the Caribbean. And so he really did struggle to sell, and buyers saw that as too high of a risk for him. And ultimately he ended up removing himself as the middleman, and he connected the farms that he was working with directly with the supermarkets, and then had a creative structure to his exit. So how can buyers de-risk this situation and mitigate the risk for themselves, Eamon?
I'll just start by saying there's typically no perfect hedge. There's no perfect way to mitigate this risk. It often can just be a bit of a weakness in the business model and has to be treated as such. But when you're in the discovery phase, the best thing to do if you suspect that there is customer concentration, or that a seller has highlighted that there is finding out who those clients are, ideally the clients' names, before you've made an offer. If the seller's unwilling to give you the clients' names, which is common.
It's common.
At least asking what industry they're in, maybe the size of the company, how long they've been a client.
Some other identifying characteristics.
Some other ways to de-risk, to see if you think it's going to be an acceptable risk to take on. Getting comfortable with that before making a formal offer.
And terms can change if you get to the table and you're, with the information you have at that time, pre-LOI, you're making an offer, that offer gets accepted, then you find out more during due diligence, and maybe some things need to be adjusted or tweaked. That can still be acceptable if both parties are in alignment to reach an agreement there. But thanks for the color there, Eamon. And so what are some other avenues for buyers to take through this process around the mitigation?
Like I said, there's no perfect hedge, but if you're able to discover this in the offer stage, the best way to address customer concentration, and sellers aren't going to like to hear this, is through a lower purchase price multiple. So assigning a lower multiple on what you deem to be normalized EBITDA. Because at the end of the day, it is a weakness in the business model, and any other weakness in a business model would typically be reflected in a change in the purchase price multiple. So this is no different. What that's going to allow you to do, hopefully, is leave a little bit of wiggle room for if you do lose that client. If you've got a little bit of extra cash flow after servicing debt, you're not going to mind if as much if you lose 20% of your cash flow. If you save a little bit of equity back, maybe you were planning to put in 500,000, but instead you're only putting in 300,000 up front. You've saved that difference such that if you do lose that client in year 1 or year 2, you've got funds that you can re-inject, and it's not going to become a life or death situation immediately.
Are earnouts another solution that can sometimes be woven in?
So the other approach is to make something contingent on the continued business of that client. So we've seen seller financing have terms in it where part of the seller financing is written off should revenue fall below a certain level.
I think that one's also called a forgivable seller note in some situations for those listening.
And again, those aren't a perfect hedge because you're only going to be saving on the interest payments for the first number of years. So if you need to make debt service payments, that little bit of interest you're saving each year isn't going to save you from needing to probably re-inject funds later on. You mentioned earnouts. Earnouts are better at rewarding sellers for potential upside than they are at protecting buyers from downside. And so, yes, you could say that no earnout will be paid this year if we lose all of our clients, but again, that's not going to plug the hole that you need to deal with.
Right.
If your debt servicing becomes greater than your cash flow.
And how are the lenders looking at customer concentration?
So most lenders use roughly the definition I gave of really high concentration being 3 clients or more that generate 50% of revenue. In those situations, it could just be that they're saying no, especially if you're going to them with a highly leveraged acquisition where you don't have remaining liquidity to inject if things go sideways. They're going to be uncomfortable with that risk. Now, if you have a plan B, so if you say, yes, if we lose this top client, I've got this money set aside over here, or I would cut these employees and that would save cash flow here. If you've got a plan and you can convince yourself that it's a good plan and you're still comfortable moving ahead with the acquisition, chances are you can probably convince a lender of the same thing.
Okay. Just strategy around the storyline.
It's giving yourself some breathing room.
Yeah, and really knowing more about those clients and the relationship and the nature of those clients and the relationship they have with the business as well. So thanks, Eamon. What I'm hearing is do as much due diligence on those clients as possible as the seller will allow. Consider the holdbacks or vendor financing as protections, as well as potentially lowering purchase price to mitigate that risk as well. But there can be a way through if there is client concentration. But certainly find out as early as possible if there is client concentration, because it will step things. It will. The words are escaping me.
You don't need to renegotiate after the offer if you just get it right the first time.
The words were escaping me there. Anyway, that's our overcoming obstacle today. Thanks very much, Eamon.
See you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please be sure to subscribe, follow us on social media, and check out our website at villagewealth.com.